Hi, 6th graders. We're on lesson 6-9, which is fractions, decimals, and percents. It begins on page 328, and our learning target is converting between fractions, percents, and decimals. So make sure that you label the top of your notebook and you write down the title so you're ready to go with your notes. So I know in chapter 4, we already went through percents and decimals and fractions and converting between all of them. So this lesson is going to be somewhat of a review, but it's going to go a little more in depth on converting between percents when there's a fraction, and then trickier fractions to convert into percent form and decimal form. So if we want to write 8 1/3% as a fraction, we can see, we can remember that any percent is that number over 100. So even though there's a fraction, we would take that mixed number, and put it over 100. So I would write this down in your notebook. You could just write 8 1/3% and then write these steps as we go through them. So 8 1/3 over 100. It's just like if it was 23%. That would be the same as 23 over 100. Any number with a percent is that number over 100. So 8 1/3 over 100 is the same as 8 1/3 divided by 100, because this symbol right here means division. So now we can change our mixed number into an improper fraction. So 3 times 8 is 24, plus 1 is 25/3, divided by 100. And now we know that if we are dividing by a number, it's the same as multiplying by the reciprocal, or the multiplicative inverse. The reciprocal of 100 is 1 over 100. So we have 25/3 times 1 over 100. And then 25 times 1 is 25. 3 times 100 is 300. So 25 300ths. And then we simplify to 1/12. So write it over 100. Write it out as division. Change our mixed number into improper fraction and flip our second number, or our keep change flip it around, and then multiply. A collectible action figure sold for 190% of its original price. Write this percent as a fraction in simplest form. So if we have 190%, again, we're going to write it over 100. So we would have 190 over 100. And then if we simplify, 190 divided by 100 is the same as 19/10. And then we can change that to a mixed number, which would equal 1 9/10. So something to remember that you probably want to write down is that a percent greater than 100 is equal to a number greater than 1. 100% equals 1. Remember, if there's a decimal, the invisible decimal is here, we go over to the left 2, so that equals 1. So all of everything means 100%, just like all of a pizza or all of something is 1. And then if there's something missing, then that would be the fraction. So 100% and 1. So a number greater than 100% is greater than 1. Write 150% as a fraction in simplest form, and then write 17.5% as a fraction in simplest form. So pause me and do the same steps that we did for the 190%, and then do the same steps as we did for that first percent. So if you need to go back, or you can look at your notes and follow those steps. So 150%, we can rewrite as 150 over 100. And then if we simplify that, I'm just going to drop my 0 in both of the ones place. So 150 100ths is the same as 15 tenths. And now I'm going to rewrite that as a mixed number. So 10 goes into 15 one time. And then I have 5 left over. So 1 and 5 tenths, which equals 1 and 1/2. Which makes sense because 150% is greater than 100, which means that it's going to be greater than 1. So it equals 1 and 1/2. 17 and 1/2% as a fraction in simplest form. So remember, we would take 17 and a half and we would write it over 100. So 17 and 1/2 over 100 equals 17 and 1/2 divided by 100. Now I'm going to change my mixed number into an improper fraction. So I'm going to rewrite it down here. So 2 times 17 is 34, plus 1 is 35 halves. And then I'm actually going to change it to multiplication right now. So I'm going to flip it, change it, and then flip 100, because remember 100 is the same as 100 over 1. So the reciprocal then would be 1 over 100. And then we can multiply that out. 35 times 1 is 35. 2 times 100 is 200. I know that they can both be divided by 5, so I'm going to simplify it that way by dividing both my numerator and denominator by 5. 35 divided by 5 is 7. 200 divided by 5 is 40. 7/40 cannot be simplified anymore, so then my answer is 7/40. Write 4/15 as a percent and then round it to the nearest hundredth. So 4/15 we know is about 4/16, which equals 1/4, and we know that that equals 25%. So we know that our answer needs to be around 25%. So this time we're going to write it as a fraction. So we know that 4/15 is the same as whatever percent it is over 100. So that's just what we're trying to figure out. So we're going to set it up as a proportion because we know that, well, let's take 1/4 and 25%. We know that 1/4 equals 25 over 100 because 4 times 25 is 100 and 1 times 25 is 100. And we know that 25% equals 25 over 100. So we know that if we had 1/4, we could take, and we were trying to figure out what the percent was, we can take 1/4 equals whatever number, we can make it x over 100, and we can see that since they're equal, it's fine to put a variable in there to try to figure it out. So we're going to do the same thing here. We're missing the percent. We're trying to figure out what that number is. So 4/15 equals n over 100, and then we know that we can cross multiply, and then we get 4 times 100 equals 400. 15 times n is 15n. And then we're going to divide each side by 15 to get rid of that 15. So we can kind of do our railroad tracks right here. And we know that 15 over 15 cancels out, so we're left with our n. And then 400 divided by 15, so if you divide that out, you would get approximately 26.67 because they needed to round it. So 4/15 is about 26.67%. Now we do not move our decimal because we know that that number is already that percent over 100, just like 25% is 25 over 100. So we're looking for this number. That's why we don't write it or we don't change our decimal. We leave it like that as a percent. So in Boston 89 over 100,000 residents blog, write this fraction as a percent. So if we have 89 over 100,000, that would be the same as n over 100 because we're trying to figure out what the percent is. So then we cross multiply. So 89 times 100 would be 8,900. 100,000 times n is 100,000 n. And then we have, we need to divide both sides by 100,000 to get n alone. So 8,900 divided by 100,000 is 0.089. And then we write that as a percent, so it would be 0.089%. A percent less than 1%, this is less than 1%, is equal to a number less than 1/100th, or so 0.01 or 1/100th. So it's a very small number. Okay, write 2/15 as a percent, and then write 7 over 1,600 as a percent. So I want you to set them both up as a proportion. So pause me, do this in your notebook, set them up as a proportion, and then solve that way. So we have 2 over 15 equals x over 100. I'm going to cross multiply, so 2 times 100 and 15 times x. So 200 equals 15x. I'm going to divide both sides by 15 so that I can have my x alone. So x equals 200 divided by 15, which if you divided that, it would be 13.333 and so on. So I'm going to round to the nearest hundredth. We don't move our decimal when we write it as a percent, so it's going to be 13.33%. 7 over 1,600 is going to be 7 over 1,600 equals x over 100. So then we have 700 equals 1,600x. Divide both sides by 1,600. That cancels each other out. So I always like to have my x over on the left side. So then x equals 700 divided by 1,600. So if you do that and you figured it out, it would be 0.4375, which equals, if we round up, to approximately 44%. Okay, and then just really fast, I just wanted you to look at a couple more. So if we wrote 5/6 as a percent, we would actually we would take 5 divided by 6, and we would get 0.83333 repeating. So then because we took the fraction and we made it into a decimal, then we need to take our decimal and go over 2 in order to make it a percent. So then we have 83.333%. Okay? So because I'm just dividing and I get a decimal, then I need to convert it to a percent. If I write it as a proportion like I did before, then that number already was set to be a percent. Bryce has read 3/5 of a book. What percent of the book has he read? 3/5 we know equals 6/10. So we can multiply 3 times 2, 5 times 2, we get 6/10, which is 0.6. Then we know that we have to move our decimal 2 places to the right, put a 0, so we get 60%. Both of these are just review from chapter 4, but I just wanted to go over them really fast. And then if you want to quickly pause me and write down this table because it's some common equivalence between fractions, decimals, and percents. And they're common fractions, but kind of funky decimals and percents that go with it. So copy this down in your book, and then when you are done, make sure that you go on and take the 6-9 NAICU quiz. Have a super evening.